My STBXW filed for a divorce 8 months ago. We have been separated for 8 months and moved in with her affair partner. Divorce is to be finalized next month. Now she's begging not to go through with it and begging me to try reconciliation. My wife, 38F, and I, 37M, first met in college. Before getting married, we dated for 5 years. Our marriage has been stable, with a few ups and downs. We have 2 daughters, 13 and 15, born in January of last year, and I observed my wife spending more time on the phone than usual. She essentially did what every other cheater does. When I attempted to communicate my concerns, they lied, shifted responsibility, and gaslighted me. I know I wasn't perfect, and I made mistakes that I deeply regret, but she treated me like a piece of all during her affair. I attempted to fix all elements of our connection that she believed were lacking. When DK arrived in early June, she admitted to having an EA and sleeping with him just twice. Then she accused me of being the cause of her affair. She said that she wanted to reconcile, and we attempted reconciliation, but she was just not interested. She continued to contact him, and they continued to converse. When I expressed my discomfort, she maintained they were just friends and continued to delete messages even after I warned her not to. When I threatened divorce, she cried, apologized, and begged me not to. When I brought up the affair, she became enraged, and I was the one who ended up apologizing. After about 2 or 3 months, she began to vanish again, claiming that she was visiting relatives who needed her at the time. I had a feeling she was going to see AP, and when I mentioned it to her, she was extremely persuasive. She went missing one weekend and didn't answer my calls or texts, and when she returned, she informed me that her cousin had fallen ill and they had to transport her to the hospital, and she had left her phone at her sister's house, and I was trying to make it work for us the whole time. She observed all of my efforts but didn't give a then. By mid-December, she informed me she was leaving, that she was unhappy in our relationship, and that, although she still loved me, she was in love with AP. She had finally met her soulmate. I recall sobbing for hours trying to persuade her, but she was set in her ways. We had to inform the children. Because her AP apartment was tiny, she suggested I could take the kids during the week, and she could come see them on weekends. A week later, she filed for divorce. This was the most difficult time of my life, and I cried for weeks. When I attempted to speak to her, all she said was that she was sorry for all she had put me through, but her mind was already set. Except for us, no one else was aware. Both she and my parents were aware that we were merely separated, but had no idea why. By the end of January, when her mother phoned and demanded I confess the truth, I had invited her and her father over. I told them everything, and I practically burst into tears on my mother-in-law's shoulder. Laws, they consoled me and apologized for their daughter's inappropriate behavior. I then informed my parents and then a few close friends, and soon enough, everyone knew about us, and I began getting reassuring messages from others who were talking about my ex. Soon after, my wife contacted me, sobbing, and told me that I had turned everyone against her and that she despises me. She said that individuals were threatening her and AP, that her father despises her, they had a good connection, and that her sisters refused to talk to her. No one will talk to her without offending her. It was the middle of April. Her relationship with AP had burned out owing to stress by the beginning of June. I recalled her visiting the kids and telling me that her AP had booted her out because he couldn't manage the stress of their relationship. She was staying in a hotel room at the time. She didn't have the appearance of someone who was sad. I replied no when she asked if she could move back in. She expressed her understanding but requested additional time with the children. She said that she wanted to make up for missed time with the children by coming in the afternoon to cook for them and spend time with them. I agreed. By this time, she would have come to prepare my favorite dinner, clean the home, and leave tiny messages with flowers saying I love you. When I got home from work, she would always make an effort to spend extra time with me. I must confess that I enjoyed spending time with her. Then she began talking about how much she misses me and questioned whether I truly want a divorce. I used to avoid these kind of talks. She informed me last week that she had been going to IC and was wondering if we might try MC. She's begun dressed like that, wearing makeup, and she's attempted to initiate with me, but I've turned her down. She has purchased additional items for me, and she has mentioned MC several times. She wept throughout the weekend, imploring me not to proceed with the divorce, saying she has already put up with a lot and all she wants is me and her family back, and she would do everything I want. It's almost as though the roles had been flipped. I've remained numb all this time, but a part of me is relieved that she's had a taste of her own medicine. I still adore her, but I'm not sure whether I should give our relationship another go. Story 2. Feeling a range of emotions after forgiving my cheating fiancé. In September, my 30th fiancé 36M cheated on me with another woman. We've been together for 6 years and were planned a lavish, beautiful wedding for later this month. This came as a complete surprise, given that he was normally extremely forthright about everything. A buddy of his, let's call him Paul, told him that he had gone to a baseball game with him and that Paul had gotten him severely intoxicated before leaving the game. They checked into a hotel, brought up a female they had met in the lobby, and so on and so forth. Paul was always someone I loathed and despised him even more now. He never said anything to me and treated me as if I were a wall. My own experience with Paul's drinking has shown me how out of control he can get, and I've always been frightened that something similar may happen to me. On the next morning he arrived home, called off work, sat me down, and informed me of what had taken place. Whatever the case, I called off the wedding and notified our guests that it had been called off due to problems with the venue. He notified his parents and siblings of what had transpired, but I chose to notify just my mother, since she is the one person I confide in and she is my only true friend. I couldn't tell anybody else since I hadn't abandoned him and didn't want to jeopardize his relationship with my family, with whom he is incredibly close, by disclosing my feelings. We are still engaged, and I realize that I seem to be a complete fool for not having left him. Except I couldn't do anything but be with him and love him. I did forgive him and love him, but I'm starting to question if part of the reason I stayed was just out of convenience for him and his family. He was born into a well-to-do family. Because to him, I'm able to stay afloat financially and continue my education, which he pays for, without being required to work. He helped me purchase a house, which is something I would have been unable to do on my own. First-generation immigrant who couldn't afford college, worked for minimum, paid my whole life, and had no savings. Life was a back then, and it continues to be so now. Having no financial concerns and knowing that my future children would not have financial concerns made me feel as if I were on another planet. After I explained to him tonight that a part of me is still with him for the sake of convenience, he was upset, but he stated it was all right as long as I'm still with him out of love for him. Everything was great. I admire him, but I can't help but feel horrible about myself for not doing more for him. Another part of me is enraged with myself for allowing myself to be kept alive by him in the first place. I would have described myself as independent before meeting him. My finances were in shambles, yet I managed to pay my bills and maintain a roof over my head. Up to the time he came into my life, I had never relied on anybody for aid. However, there is another part of me that is reasonably concerned that he would repeat the act later in his life. We're still engaged, but I decided to plan a modest family-only wedding in order to avoid embarrassment in front of my peers. I believe I'm just not sure what to feel, and I think I just wanted to scream since no one else except my mother is aware of what's going on with me. Thanks for taking the time to read this and listen, if you're reading this.